Hi friends, my name's Georgie. The warmest of welcomes to the Just Breathe podcast. I'm so excited to be bringing you another powerful conversation to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be nattering away to quite the incredible woman. Dasha Maximov is a female biohacker, women's health advocate, and founder and CEO of WealthCo. WealthCo is an evidence-based women's health community with a podcast under the same name. I found Dasha and I's conversation so incredibly insightful and empowering. We got onto topics like the contraceptive pill, female hormones, as well as where to start on your journey to optimizing your health as a woman. I learned so much from our conversation, and I know you will too. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep on building that strong community. The more people talking about breathing, the better. All right, let's crack right on with the conversation. It's a really powerful one. Here is episode 7 of Just Breathe with Dasha Maximov. Hey Dasha, how you doing? Thank you so much for coming on the Just Breathe podcast. Pleasure to have you.
I'm honored and excited for the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honestly, I'd love to delve right in and just get to know a little bit more about your journey with women's biohacking. It's something that's always fascinated me, but something that I guess, don't really know where to start with. I know you're really big and involved with the Health Optimization Summit and all that. So you're all over it. So I'd love to hear about your journey.
Yeah, sure. I'll try and make it brief.
Sure.
My it's had a lot of different twists and turns from being a management consultant to thinking I wanted to be an Ayurvedic doctor, so apprenticing in India, to becoming a yoga teacher, to going to get my master's in neuroscience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely had its twists and turns.
Yeah.
But I think the things that's important in terms of health and biohacking for me now is, one, the thing that got me into this was I had a brain injury, and I fell, and it wasn't my first one, it was actually my sixth one. So I'm quite you can call me clumsy, you can call me really into sports, you can call me a daredevil. I mean, it's probably a combination of all of them.
My goodness.
But yeah, so the brain injury was the worst because it was a year after I had root canals done. So I think that also impacted it. My symptoms were chronic fatigue, amnesia, depression, anxiety,
oh my God.
chronic headaches for 14 months. So
14 months.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. So it was going to a number of different doctors, trying everything from the woo-woo nonsense to this is the typical list of things that you do for a brain injury.
Right. So you just do anything, right? To relieve yourself of that. My goodness.
Yeah, I just tried. I honestly, it was at the point where you wake up and you have a headache. You didn't sleep all night long because you're in such pain. So you're taking painkillers so that you are able to at least sleep or kind of get through the day.
Yeah.
So it's, especially for somebody who I had always identified with, I'm a quick thinker, I can get stuff done, let's go.
Yeah.
So for me, having that taken away was also a kind of a call to, wait, who are you? And what do you identify yourself as? Do you identify with your brain? Who is this new version of Dasha if Dasha doesn't have a brain, kind of a thing, right? So that's how I got into biohacking. I think a lot of different people get into biohacking or this kind of health space, oftentimes either because they have had some sort of a pain story, if you will, or somebody in their family has. And so for me, that was the thing that really hit home, saying, okay, I have to take control of this. And previously my mom had breast cancer and thyroid cancer, and her mom as well had a lot of health issues. So
Yeah.
from a women's perspective, it's one of those things where selfishly I know that I need to get a hold of myself,
Right.
you know, because I have that lineage, right? And I have the potential, not necessarily that it's going to come to fruition, but if I don't work to optimize my own health, then it's a higher likelihood, right,
Yeah.
for me to get some of those things. So women's health became of interest to me in part because my mom, and in
Yeah.
part because last year, like you mentioned, I organized the Health Optimization Summit. I was part of the
Yeah.
founding team there, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. We had a fantastic turnout, and this year it's gonna hopefully it goes off, and but we didn't really have the female voice present, right? And I
Yeah.
and that's, we can, that's another topic for a long discussion, but I think that's where we're missing right now. It's
Uh-huh.
still, when we talk about women's health, what is women's health?
Right.
Is it period pain? Is it depression? Is it heart attacks? Is it a higher likelihood for depression? Is it higher likelihood for autoimmune diseases, for
Right.
thyroid problems, right? There's a whole host of things that fall under the quote unquote women's health.
Yeah, yeah, it is a term thrown around a lot. And especially I got into biohacking or became aware of the word biohacking at first just because of bulletproof coffee, which of course you'll know about. I'm sure many people have been on that journey and loved it, and then was like, well, what else? What else is this biohacking thing? It's really
Yeah.
cool. Never did I think for a very long time actually about biohacking, which of course is just making those small changes to optimize your health. But for me specifically as a woman, which actually now, and especially now I've spoken to you previously, is like, oh, why? Because that's a whole different kettle of fish to
Yeah.
a guy's way of biohacking, because there's so many other elements involved that we need to pay attention to, but actually that maybe have not been brought to our attention, which perhaps is part of the problem, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And I think biohacking has always been, it's still new, right? It's only what,
Yeah.
7, 8 years old. So
It's a
it
baby.
yeah, so it makes sense that it's going to go through its growth phase and change and
Mm,
all of that. But I think you hit the nail on the head there by saying we are very, very, very different. And there's an incredible doctor, Dr. Stacy Sims, who coined the phrase that women are not just small men, which I think is really, really fun.
that is incredible, actually.
Right. I mean, we're not just, and there used to be back in the day, if you look into the timeline of women's health and research, oftentimes they would say women's health is just bikini health, i.e., that we as women are the exact same thing as men, with the exception of anything that's underneath the bikini, i.e., your bra and your
Right.
and your kind of
And your
panty line.
pants, right?
Right, exactly. And so
Wow.
that's what it used to be. Now, fast forward to today, we're really starting to see that there's a change, right? And we
Mm.
realize that in truth, these little things called hormones, which are extremely different between
Yeah.
men and women, actually dictate how we live life and how we experience literally everything.
Right.
So when we know and we say, okay, well, what is the main difference between men and women? Hormones.
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 Right?
Yeah.
And so if our hormones are different, and what do our hormones
Yeah.
do? They're little chemical messengers that go around and they say, tell your body what to do, how to feel, how to act, how to interact with the world.
It's
So
everything,
it's
right?
everything. It's
Everything.
everything.
Yeah.
It tells you, are you hungry? Are you sleepy? Do you want to have sex? Do you is your, do you have energy? Do you not?
Yeah.
Those four things alone, just those four things alone, think about how often you're dealing with that throughout the course of the day.
100%. And do you know what? That's so interesting, because the way you're talking there already, perspective wise, is quite inside out, that you listen internally and then you act. Whereas I think many people today, especially in the UK, and worldwide especially, are trying to meet a social norm of, I go running, I go to the gym, I work out, I am on this, whatever the latest fad diet is, right? Of trying to, and it's all just in an effort to be healthy, right? But what does being healthy actually mean if
Mhm.
you're pushing your body without actually listening to it first, which listening to you seems to be your hormones.
Yep. Yeah. That's from all the, I mean, this past year has been a lot of me kind of compiling information together and really, really honing in and reading more. I've been a sponge. I mean, COVID
Right.
has been horrendous, but in that sense, I've just
Of
been a
course.
sponge, right?
Of course.
And that's what, at least for me, it comes down to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in truth, I mean, we can go down the route of saying that we are, I mean, we are, as individuals, are not really individuals. We're kind of a host for a whole bunch of bacteria, right?
Right. Right.
But similarly, we as individuals are not individuals, we are our hormones. And so therefore, when our hormones are imbalanced, that's when we see things like PCOS, endometriosis, exhaustion. You know, that feeling like when you're around 2, 3 o'clock and
Mm-hmm.
you just feel like you have to crash?
Yeah, that
That's
slump.
that slump. That's not you. That's your hormones. That's your
Right.
hormones being imbalanced.
Right.
Right. And so I think that, to me, what I really loved the idea is, one, if we start separating out ourselves and our hormones, then it becomes really an interesting experiment, because we start saying, oh, wait, my exhaustion is not me. It's not Georgie. It's not Dasha. It's not me, right?
Mm.
My lack of wanting to have sex is not me.
It's not.
My lack
Wow.
of, whatever it is, like these symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
that's not me. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's not something to be, you know, fearful of.
Yeah.
It's something to say, wait, I am not it's actually my hormones. All of
Yeah.
these things are actually my
It's just
hormones. And
there's just an
therefore,
imbalance here.
right. And so it's separating us out from the disease, or the ailment or the illness or the symptoms, or, it's separating us out from what that is. And so therefore, then
Wow.
you can start saying, all right, Fab, I know that my exhaustion at 3 p.m. and wanting to just crash and take a nap, that's not me. That's my hormones being imbalanced. And I can do something about that.
Wow. That
Right.
that's incredible. That is incredible in terms of that, that especially now, my goodness, there is so much anxiety, there's so much depression out there, there's so much exhaustion, there's a lot of people feeling very hopeless. And even just hearing those words gave me so much hope, in terms of like, oh, no, 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 you can do something about that. It's not you, it's not who you are. That's incredibly empowering.
Yeah. And I think it's, to me, my whole entire journey within this kind of, since the past couple of years, since even the brain injury, has
Mm-hmm.
been, okay, how do I rebalance? What is off in my system that I need to rebalance to get back to that homeostasis?
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's fascinating, because now that I'm very much focused on the women's side of things, still very interested in brain health, because it's just
Mm,
fascinating to
of
me.
course.
But I think, I talk to my girlfriends and they say, oh, well, yeah, I've had, really, I had to be away for a couple of days and just shut the world off because I had such bad PMS symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what? Naturally, normally, if your hormones are balanced, you shouldn't be having such bad PMS symptoms. I literally have no issues now, right? Because I've rebalanced. My period comes and goes. Maybe it's one day where I have that crampy and that horrible feeling, but then I move on, right? I no longer have that complete exhaustion. I no longer have that dread of, oh my gosh, I can't get out of bed, right? And so to me, it's, if we're talking about PMS symptoms, or even things like, again, contraception, which is a big question for women, because again, that's hormones,
Yeah.
right? All of these things, it's how do you understand, A, whether you do have a hormonal imbalance,
Mm-hmm.
and then B, if you do, start writing that. And
Yeah.
it's not going to happen overnight, right?
Right. Right.
It takes a couple of months. It takes a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you do, now, I mean, I'm in a place where I don't feel that yo-yo as much, right?
Hmm.
Past
Yeah.
month or so, I've noticed it to be a little bit more, because again, this past month has been a little bit more stressful.
Yeah.
But it's this beautiful thing that the body is malleable,
Yeah.
it changes. And
Yeah.
it's something that you have the power to change.
Yeah.
I wish that there was more folks kind of talking about that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And it's fascinating actually to me, and that's interesting in terms of my conditioning, listening to you talk about hormones in terms of when you're hungry, when you have energy, you feel like exercising, etc. Because I've got to be honest, when I hear the word hormones, I think period.
Yep.
Hormones, period. I don't
Yep.
actually think of it about a whole being. I think of I'm hormonal. I'm due on my period. We use those sentences all the time, right? I'm feeling very hormonal today.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, I'll even apologize for it a lot. I'm really sorry. I'm just really hormonal. Like, don't come near me today.
Mhm.
And that's really interesting. And especially in terms of you talking about that balance, especially in terms of PMS, sorry, especially in terms of contraception, because I myself, I've been on that journey recently, as you know, of coming off the contraceptive pill and asking a lot of questions, which I know so many women are so confused about in terms of whether they can trust their own bodies in terms of their periods, or because at the age of 15, 16, right, I myself as well, not even in terms of to protect myself, because I wasn't even sexually active when I was 15, 16. It was purely because I had a little bit of skin, a little bit
Okay.
of a couple spots, and so the doc said, great, here's a pill. And I've been taking that pill for 10 years,
Mhm.
putting that in my body, and um have only now started to pay proper attention to what it could be doing to my body, because I'm very serious about optimizing my health. We all want to be healthy. So I'm really interested in your opinion, and I know many people are, of the contraceptive pill, and is that actually abstaining us from achieving that homeostasis, achieving that balance?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, kudos to you
Thank you.
to start the journey, because I think it is a journey, right?
Yeah.
Of especially something that we've been programmed to think is fantastic, that we've been taking for years,
Yeah.
and now saying, wait, kind of scratching your head and saying, wait, is this linked to XYZ other symptom that I've got,
Yeah.
right? Or starting to question our doctors. That is something that I
Yeah.
find to be a mental shift for people.
It's a big
And that's,
mental shift. It's a
yeah.
big mental shift. Yeah, and with the link, you're completely right. I started to question the last year why I would get severe bouts of anxiety for about 48 hours
Mhm.
before I came on my period, which wasn't a real period because it was a synthetic period created by the pill. And I
Mhm.
just felt I had no control.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's typical. That's absolutely typical. So it's um I think I think when we talk about hormones, one thing just to
Hmm.
because I'll answer your question, but I think
Of
it's a
course.
convoluted question, right?
Yeah.
So I think just to ground us, one is when you are taking any sort, so hormones, right? Again, hormones, we talk hormonal. Yes, your cycle as a female shifts over the course of the month. So
Yeah.
you've got estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Women do have testosterone. We
Yeah.
just have it at much lower levels than men do.
Right.
But we do have it. So, but these hormones, it's a beautiful, beautiful cascade that happens throughout the course of the month,
Right.
right? When it's balanced.
Right.
You need to have peaks of estrogen, you need to have troughs of estrogen, you have peaks of progesterone, which makes you feel yummy, and like, that it just makes you feel good, right?
Right.
You have testosterone, which makes you feel like you can conquer the world and just
Right.
just go for it, right? And it's kind of the higher libido when
That
you,
makes sense.
right? So it's those three, and there's others involved as well, but those are the three big ones.
Right.
So when we talk about hormones, again, hormones are these chemical messengers that literally tell your body what to do. You
Right.
also have other hormones like leptin or ghrelin, which are also hormones. They're not sex hormones, but they are hormones that are impacting whether you feel hungry or whether you're saying, I'm good, I don't want to eat anything. Those are also impacted by the course of the different things that you do in life. It's impacted by light, it's impacted by sleep. I mean, there's a huge conversation to be had just on hormones, right? But the point is, and the short version of what I'm trying to say is that your hormones dictate how you experience this life, right? So if your
Yeah, it's
hormones,
huge.
if you're taking a exogenous, an external hormone, then you're impacting your life, right? So it's not something where people just say, oh, well, I'm going to take the pill, and it's just one fallacy is it's just kind of located for, it's just going to impact my ovaries.
Yeah, it's
That's
just for my
impossible.
periods. It's just
Yeah,
for
it was
my
just for my
periods.
periods. That's impossible, right? Our bodies all cascade throughout. Your hormones go throughout your entire body, so it's not something where they, it just goes to your ovaries, right?
Yeah.
So, so in terms of the pill, I mean, my view on it is, I'm just going to be bold about it and say, if you are somebody who is looking to optimize your health and you don't need the pill, i.e., you don't need it because you are in a situation where you could potentially get, you're living on the street and you have, who knows what kind of situation you're around, and in terms of evaluating the cost
Oh
benefit,
my God, there
it's
are
better,
exceptions. There are
right?
exceptions, of
Right. It's
course.
better
That's
for you to,
important.
right.
Yeah.
So if it's one of those things where you truly do not need the pill, I would say it behooves us to get off of the pill in order to optimize our health.
Right.
Right. And the reason, again, being because if you look at the literature about the pill, one, there's really not been any longitudinal study done on the pill from a woman who is starting to take it at age 15 and then going through perimenopause, menopause, and onwards. There's not been a longitudinal study for the entire populace of that, right?
Right.
So that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Two is there have been a couple, there's an incredible book by a fantastic researcher. Her name is Dr. Sarah Hill. And she talks about specifically the birth control and the brain. So to me, I mean, talk about the fact that I love women's health and I love the brain. It's just, it's
Right.
an
Yeah.
incredible book, right? It blends both my worlds together. Now, what she talks about, a couple of things. You have to just go read the book on your own, but the synopsis is, one, she talks about how the pill does impact our HBA axis. That axis impacts how we take on stress and how we're able to be resilient to stress. So
Right.
it's not that women who are on the pill are not experiencing stress, or that the people, you are experiencing stress.
Yeah.
It's just the matter that the pill impacts your HPA axis and it overloads it such that you don't have that resilience to come back and bounce back from stress. Right. So then you're kind of overloading the entire system. And so then what they've found is there potentially could be reverberating effects longer term in terms of mental health, in terms of depression, and in terms of anxiety.
Right.
So when I see somebody who's on the pill for acne, that freaks me out,
Right.
right? Because acne, what is acne, right? Oftentimes, acne is because you've just had too much testosterone, or again, your hormones are slightly imbalanced, and that
It's
just means, okay,
another imbalance.
right. So we just need to fix that at the root cause,
Right.
not just put a band-aid approach on it and say, I'm going to give you external hormones on top of that to then, make everything even. That does not make sense. And we need to, I mean, anybody who is below the age of 25, in my opinion, should not be on birth control. Full stop. Reason being because your brain is still developing until age 25.
Right.
So if you're adding hormones in, you're messing with the chemistry. You're messing with the chemistry of your brain, such that for the next 60 years or however long you're going to live, that could have reverberating effects on that HPA axis and on your mental health. So
Wow.
to me, it's a big red flag to say, oh, you have some cystic acne, or you have, slightly kind of heavy periods. Here's the pill. That implies to me that the doctor, A, may not have enough time, or B, may not be fully informed,
Right.
right, about the alternatives, because sorry if you
All
can hear
right.
that. Hear it? I don't know if you can
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah. But it's okay.
No, you can cut it hopefully, but yeah, I think that the question becomes, what what do you look at in this life, right? What's the long-term game? And when I start thinking about me as a 15-year-old and having acne, it was the worst thing ever
In that moment. Right.
in that moment. So I get it. I absolutely get it. I'm not, I'm not lacking empathy in that sense. But as a mom, or as somebody who's kind of elder, realizing that this is a short-term gain for a long-term loss, that's where I start to question it.
That's cool. Wow.
So I've said a lot there. I don't know if you,
No, that is so powerful. That's really interesting. In terms of the first thing you said there as well, with the stress response, in terms of resilience, is what you're saying is that if it lowers your resilience, we talk about this a lot in breathing in terms of your heart rate variability, that if you have a lower heart rate variability, that you are much more reactive in stressful situations. Whereas if you can work to make your heart rate variability a little higher by practicing breathing, slowing down your breathing, cadence breathing is amazing for it. And just upping your heart rate variability, you're making your body more flexible in terms of responding to stress, meaning that you can respond rather than react with no control and get straight to that hell zone. You're more coherent, you are more responsive. But that's so interesting, because you can do all the breath work you want, right? But if you're constantly putting synthetic hormones in your body, then you're almost playing a losing game, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going about such a natural practice such as breathing, what we are born to do, yet you're not trusting your own body to operate in its natural function, which would be your hormones. Do you think we've kind of lost faith in the genius of our own bodies?
100%. 100%, unfortunately. And yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that what I've said in the past is I think we've outsourced our health, right? We've outsourced it to the doctors, to the specialists, to the people
Handed it over.
We handed it over. Yeah. And we said, okay, well, I don't know how this body works, but he does, because he has an MD behind his name, or she has an MD behind her name, and she has a white lab coat, right? We've given that off. But in truth, the only person who's ever going to know what works and doesn't work is you, because you have to live in this body.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, when I went to all that, I mean, that broke really quickly for me when I went to all these doctors, and they would say your tests are fine, but I was still waking up with chronic headaches every day.
Yeah, I don't feel fine. So
I don't feel fine, right?
What's going on? Right.
Exactly.
And,
So for me, that broke really quickly, but I think it's difficult for people to get to that unless they've had a major issue or a major failure of the medical system. But yeah, I mean, oftentimes doctors, and there's some fantastic doctors out there, don't get me wrong.
I was going to say, I think it's important to say that neither of us are downing doctors here, that doctors and medical professionals do incredible work, but how on earth could you expect a doctor to know the intricacy of every single person's individual? It's impossible, right? It's an impossible task.
Right. And I think what I would say I'm kind of calling people to is that let's go back to that place of intuition, and let's go back to that place of really understanding this body rather than just putting a band-aid on it. And what I mean by that is, and the problem with it is that it takes time and effort to figure that out, right? So for me, for example, in terms of birth control, I've been off it for years. And I use the fertility awareness method, which once you understand it, it's really easy and it works and it's fantastic. But when you're first starting out, it does take time and effort. And it is weird to say, oh, wait, there are certain weeks in the month that, because my hormones aren't unnaturally balanced in the, with the pill, I am going to have fluctuations.
Right.
And that's actually a beautiful thing. So I can now plan and say, this week, I am going to be a little bit more reserved or calm, or, I'm not going to get a whole lot done, maybe, but I am going to be in a much more creative space. I'm going to be much more in a strategic place to be thinking longer term, right?
Sounds like you're so much more than aware. You are taking responsibility for your own menstrual cycle, rather than, as you say, handing it over to someone else to put a band-aid on, when actually it's having a period is not a problem. Right?
No. I mean, again, I enjoy having it, right? And I know that's a crazy thing to even say, but it's because it's a, for me, it's a monthly report card,
Right.
right, of my health. And
Yeah.
so if we think of everything about health optimization, women have that, guys don't. We're in a good position where we have something that it comes every single month, or it should come every single month, and it shares and tells you about your health.
Right.
Right? It tells you, are you eating the right foods? Are you stressed? Are you drinking enough liquids? It tells you, it has these, what's the color of it? What's the consistency? How are your cramps? Right? Your cramps can also tell you things.
Yeah.
But again, that's that intuition where, okay, you're going to have to do this month after month after month and see what the changes are going to be. I know
Right.
for a fact that if I have dairy or sugar 2 weeks, or kind of day 7, like the last 7 days of my cycle before my period's going to be horrendous. It's going to be horrible.
Wow.
My
Really?
cramps, yeah, no chance. No chance. Like, goodbye world then.
Wow.
But
Do you
that's
know,
a very,
I think a lot of women are not even actually aware of the different phases of the cycle. It's something actually, and I'm 25 at this point. I've just switched to the Natural Cycles app, which I'm really enjoying. Just taking my temperature every morning. I'd really recommend it for anyone looking to switch. It's very good in terms of guiding you. It gives you reminders and it kind of educates you. And it's really got me interested in learning about my cycle. And I became interested in it because of exercise and optimizing my fitness and going, it's really weird how before my period, right, I just have no motivation to work out. Why is that? I then start learning about breathing and read this crazy paper that says our CO2 levels can drop to up to 25% when we're in our luteal phase, right? So then your breathing becomes faster and ultimately you get out of breath a lot quicker. And so, and all the rest, of course, you have less energy, but it's all very natural and it's normal. And the fact that our body has seasons, I think, is something new to a lot of people, that actually it's not just copy and paste every day of every week, same routine, same thing, bam, 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 that's going to make me better, more healthy. Actually, we have seasons just like the world does, just like the moon has a cycle. And there's obviously a lot of research into that as well. But it's do you think it's something we should all be paying a lot more attention to, the sort of seasons of our body?
yeah. I mean, I think, sorry, I have a fly here.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a power, honestly. I
Really?
think it
Yeah.
is I do, and this is not the hippy dippy side. I actually do very much think that having a cycle, having a proper cycle, knowing your cycle is a superpower.
Yeah.
Because when we are, I mean, that is a natural way of how we as women should be living. This, anything else other than that is a band-aid. And it's not, and it's ultimately going to have reverberating effects on something else down the line. Full
Right.
stop. Full stop. Right. So if you're somebody who has something that's really tough, PCOS or endometriosis, you have my attention, you have my pain, right? I get it. It is not an easy thing. And it is very, very, very easy to when a doctor says, yeah, I feel I know what you've got, and here's a pill, and the pill takes these things away. It takes away the hair on your face, takes away the hair on your nipples, it takes away the pain during your period. I understand. I absolutely understand that it is a fix.
Right.
The question then to me though, it just becomes, okay, if that fits for now as a short-term fix, fantastic. If you need to get through a year, 2 years, fine. But
Right.
as you start unpeeling that layers of health, endometriosis and PCOS do not need to be played around with the pill. Full stop. There's an incredible book called 8 Steps to PCOS by Dr. Fiona McCulloch.
Wow.
She's incredible. She breaks down PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. She breaks it down into 4 different types. She
Right.
talks about how insulin and sugar impacts it. She talks about, I mean, absolutely breaks it down. And she is a medically trained doctor, right? So this is not woo woo. This is not hippie. This is somebody who's saying you can take control of your health, right? And
Right.
so I think circling back, do I think that more women need to be doing, understanding their cycle? I think if you consider yourself somebody who is in health, and if you don't understand your cycle, then you've got some homework to do.
Right. But we're all in health. surely, really, right? In terms of that, whether we're aware of it or not, we all have a body, and we all have a system within that body, and so we're all in health. Is it more of a question, I guess, of if you're aware of it or not? And if you have that, I'll be honest, I actually see it as self-worth and self-love to
Mm,
take care of it. That, you know, if you're not willing to take care of your own body, then why? You, that it's a disrespect to your own system, right?
yeah. I think it's interesting because I'm with you there
Right,
3,000%,
right.
right? Because I'm in this space, right?
Of course.
If you talk to somebody who is a mom of a newborn, who has her own company,
Mm-hmm.
who's crazy, whose passion in this life is to build that company, whatever it may be, let's
Right, right,
say,
right.
and to be a good mom.
Yeah.
Perhaps for her, she doesn't have the time to dedicate to this,
Right.
right? And so I think that's where, to me, health becomes more of, less of a judgment and more of a conversation of what are your priorities. So it's the priority that becomes of most interest to me. So for example, somebody who says my priority is to have a child at some point in my life, then if that's your priority, I would really start looking in, and let's say they have PCOS, then I would say, okay, if your priority is to have a child somewhere down the line and you have PCOS, well, perhaps you can start understanding more of how your body works. If your
Yeah.
priority has nothing to do with that, you just want to, kind of blitz through and make sure that you get this company off the ground, and this is not of importance now, and it's not of priority now, then that's fine. The
Yeah.
question becomes, in a couple of years, hopefully you're fine. Hopefully maybe at that point your health becomes a priority, and maybe at that point you start saying, okay, my company has now gone off the ground, I'm doing really great, now I have more time to dedicate to breath work, to understanding my cycle, to so it
Yeah.
really, and it's interesting because since I'm in this space, I find myself really always wanting to give advice and all of that, and it's everybody's on their
Of
own path.
course, of course. And yeah, it's so important for it to be a discussion rather than ever coming from a place of judgment. And I suppose what I said before about having respect for your own body and loving your own body, I suppose it comes from a passion of just how beautiful a woman's body is, and that wish that every woman would prioritize their own body, because no matter whether your focus is on hormones or breathing or whatever, fasting, however, whatever your method of where you want to start, and of course circling, your hormones are a very foundational place to start for a woman, um, that it's it's really important that you prioritize that journey, because by prioritizing that journey, you then elevate every other part of your life as a result. So
Yeah.
if you are that corporate woman that has that big company, then why not make the time to focus on your body? Because by doing so, your company will skyrocket
Mhm.
because you have the energy to make it skyrocket. Whereas, what's the other option? You get burnt out and then you can't work for 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
It's a wonderful question, and it's
It's
one that
and it's
I've,
individual,
yeah.
right?
It's a
Yeah,
wonderful question. It's one that I've lived through, frankly.
yeah,
I did the corporate thing. I got burnt out. I have my own company now, and I see it. I see it's very easy to get burnt out, and
yeah.
it is the question of recognizing and saying, okay, why is health important to me?
Right. And what
Or
does it
what
mean to me?
Right. What's the impetus and what's the pain that you're having now of when you're not in health? When you're
Right.
not in health, you can't show up fully for your friends and family. You can't show, and for your colleagues. You
Yeah.
can't have you stop having fun, right? Because you're so stressed. You stop playing rather.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the question to me in terms of, and maybe, in terms of hormones, in terms of health, in terms of women's health, it always becomes, what is your priority, and what are you willing to put into it? So
Yeah.
maybe just to kind of close off in terms of the pill and your monthly cycle. I mean, your monthly cycle, well, one, you can only get pregnant one day out of the month.
I was just about to bring this up that
Yeah.
there is definitely, I think, a belief among young people that every time you have sex, no matter what, like it's nailed into you as you grow up that if you have sex, you will get pregnant.
Yeah.
And that is a belief that is drummed into you, and of course it's drummed into you out of love and out of care and out of protection. But it's interesting after what we've spoke about, and I'm sure about what you're going to share, is that actually that's not the case, right?
Yeah. It's mind-boggling to me how many fallacies are out there about how to get pregnant. So just to debunk a couple of them, maybe. One, you can only get pregnant. A woman can only get pregnant one day out of the month when she ovulates. Now, that being said, sperm can live in the vaginal canal for up to 5 days.
Right.
So, therefore, it's really 6 days of a time frame when you're actually able to get pregnant.
Right.
So taking a pill for the entire month, every single, or for 3 weeks out of the month, and poisoning your body, because that's effectively what it is, for 6 days doesn't seem to me, at least, to be a great cost benefit analysis. Right. So I think that's one myth to debunk. The other is just to say that, again, the only way that you are going to get pregnant is when sperm is in the vaginal canal. Right. So I've heard things of, oh yeah, my gym teacher told me that, if we were fooling around and we had clothes on, no, like, no, there's so it's, that's just, let's just debunk that flat out. I think the other thing is, what I've noticed as well is, I have a lot of female friends who are now trying to get pregnant, and so it's a very interesting shift that happens when
that is interesting shift in terms of a woman's life.
Yeah, so from your 20s to your 30s, all of a sudden, or maybe from your 30s to your 40s, who knows, whenever your time is, but there's that shift, and all of a sudden women want to get pregnant, right? And so what's interesting to note is that so in terms of your eggs, right? So you are born with the total amount of eggs you're ever going to have in your life.
Right.
Now, not all of them are obviously fertile, and every single month an egg ovulates, and at that ovulation, that's when the egg can be released and inseminated, right? Now you have a finite amount of eggs throughout, and by age 30, you have a much less amount of them. By 35, it's even smaller. It's like 20% or something like that. You can actually, there's a really good company called Modern Fertility that on their website, you can just type in your age, when you'd like to get pregnant, how many kids you'd like to have, and they can tell you kind of a percentage. Again, it's ballpark and it depends by every single woman,
right?
But it's interesting to note how quickly your eggs fall off kind of over the time frame of your life.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and if you think about it historically, historically the idea was that you get pregnant when you're in your 20s. That's your most fertile time frame. That's the time when you're the kind of the best version of yourself, if you will, to give that to your kids.
Right.
And then you're able to carry a full term. You have energy. You can have multiple children. With where we are right now in technology, and in vitro fertilization and egg freezing and things like that, that time frame has been pushed.
Right.
But it is something to think about, especially for those women in their 20s, saying, okay, if I'm starting to plan or starting to think, just sit back and one day just, sit with a glass of wine, and just think about it and say, are you somebody who wants to have 2 children, 1 child, 3 children, 7 children? I don't know. But if that's the case, then there is a time frame to some extent, because even with egg freezing, that is a whole process. But even with egg freezing, they always say it is not a guaranteed, right? So even if you freeze your eggs and in your 20s, which is quite an expensive procedure, but even if you do that, it could be that you use them in your 40s and it doesn't work. So
Right.
it's a potential. Oftentimes people tell me, oh, well, it's an insurance plan for me. Yeah, it's an insurance plan, but it's not a guaranteed insurance plan,
Well,
right?
you can't play nature fully, right? You can't. It's not a game in terms of that. We can't control full. We think we can, but you can't play that to 100% guarantee with anything, right?
Right, right, right. And uh, it's again, it's everybody's choice, but I think the question becomes, where do you stand on externally impacting your body? Right, or introducing external things into your body, right? For
Yeah.
some people, the limit is, oh, it's the skincare that I put on, or if I use Botox, let's say, or something like that. People are fine with that, but then they're really, really kind of pretty about the organic foods that they're putting into their system.
Right.
And or they'll say, okay, I'm really, really healthy, but then I've got breast implants, right? Or I've, so it's this strange kind of mixture of how we need to choose for ourselves what we're comfortable for, right?
Right.
And all of us are hypocrites in some way, shape, or form, and that's
Yeah.
and yeah, that's fine. That's part of being human. So
Mhm.
it's just choosing what you're planning on being hypocritical about, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. And saying, okay, yeah, for me, for example, if I'm really interested in my hormones, then I need to look holistically at everything. I need to look at, I need to reevaluate birth control. Maybe for you right now, it still does make sense, perhaps.
Right.
Who knows? I need to reevaluate the foods that I'm eating, which have external kind of xenoestrogens, like soy, for example, that
Mhm.
impact your body. I need to look at my skincare products, which
Right.
oftentimes we don't think about that as something that's going to impact our hormones and is going to impact our period,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's this
Interconnectedness. Right. Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone if say even from listening to this that they are inspired to even start to look into alternative methods of contraception than the pill, such as natural cycles? And it was something, there was a lot of fear around it for me those few days when I was like, one pill left. It was scary in terms of, especially when we had spoken previously about hormones dictating a lot of emotional states and a lot of your emotions, um, that I was like, I don't know how my body's going to react because I've never been an adult not on the pill. I've never experienced my body in its complete natural state. And that was something that was quite sad and actually quite profound. And it affected me a lot because I now feel at the age of 25, it's actually quite a beautiful journey that I'm starting to get to know myself in my natural form. And now I'm really optimizing my health in terms of, yes, it all started by me paying attention to my breathing, but that then led to me paying more attention to my hormones. And as a result, my skin is the best it's ever been. I have great energy and I wake up with energy. But if I don't have energy, I am curious to understand why, rather than me just saying, bad day, you know.
Yep.
I'll whack a painkiller in, or I'll drink a glass of wine. I don't need that glass of wine because I'm out there reading or having conversations with other women to be empowered to, how can I restore homeostasis? And but back to my question, I mean, it was very scary for me to come off the pill. I'm sure it would be scary for a lot of women. And what can you expect? It's individual, of course, but is there anything in particular that you can expect to happen upon coming off that pill?
Yeah, yeah. So, one, thank you for sharing that, because that's a tough journey. That is
Yeah.
it's again, it's a mental shift, and
Hmm.
and especially it's, if you have been on it for years, then exactly what you're saying, you're
Yeah.
relearning how your body works. I think the first thing that I would say is, if you're planning on doing this, then get a buddy, right? Or
Right.
get family or friends or a loved one, or whoever, your partner, whoever, to really be there and be your friend, be your coach, right?
Yeah.
Because because it's interesting, because even some women will say, you know, and I can't get off the pill, for example, but maybe I can get on to a lower dose. And even things like that, it's fantastic, but you're dictating your body's chemistry. And so you want to have somebody outside of you to be able to tell you, yeah, you're not crazy. You have changed,
Yeah.
right? Like your mood swings are different, or I don't know, whatever it may be, right? This is not you. This is whatever pill that you've decided to take. So I would just find a buddy, I guess, the first thing. The things that oftentimes people find and what happens is cystic acne. So you get acne right along the jawline.
Right.
Right. That's one of the major things that people will kind of complain about. And immediately when they see that, they say, nope, I'm going back on the pill.
Right.
Because there's a mental component of we as
Yeah.
women have the beauty element to us. And so that's the first thing. Oftentimes what that is because your body, when you take the pill, your body doesn't produce as much testosterone. So when you get off the pill, all of a sudden, all the testosterone kind of your ovaries say, wait, I can make testosterone. Okay, fantastic, great. But again, how does that present itself? It can present with cystic acne, right? It can present with oilier skin. It can present with higher libido. So there's positives as well.
Yeah.
I think in terms of somebody coming off the pill, a must read is Dr. Jolene Brighton. She has an incredible book called Beyond the Pill. And she talks about all of this stuff. She is hilarious, fantastic. She's on Instagram and she gives a lot of good information. And one of the things that she talks about is that you're going to want to almost start changing your diet 1, 2, 3 months before you decide to do this. So if you decided to shift tomorrow, then fantastic, great. You don't have to wait 3 months to do it, is my point.
Right.
But there are certain foods that you can start eating that are going to resupplement you back, because the pill does deplete a lot of the crucial nutrients that we need. So it depletes B12, zinc, selenium, magnesium. So B12, zinc, selenium, folate, B6. It depletes a lot of these nutrients, and so
wow,
when
I never knew that. That's
Mhm.
wow.
Yep. So oftentimes when somebody is on the pill, their doctor will also say, make sure you have a supplement. And so again, somebody who's been on the pill for years and years and years, think about it. What is that doing? Constant chronic depletion of those nutrients.
Vital nutrients too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all
I mean,
vital.
the ones that actually make your body function well.
Right.
And then again, if you're constantly depleting your body, chances are that depletion is impacting, maybe it's not a one-for-one causation, but it's correlated to an impact of increased inflammation. Increased inflammation, what does that often give us? That gives us a whole host of different diseases. So the pill has been linked with things like increased autoimmunity. Women have more autoimmune diseases like lupus and MS and things like that than men by threefold. So
Wow.
does it follow that, okay, potentially, could it be that the pill is part and parcel as to why we have increased autoimmunity compared to men? Perhaps.
Right.
We don't know. So yeah, getting those nutrients back into your diet, into your supplements. Again, it could be that you're getting most of it from your food. Hopefully you can, but sometimes you want to get it in supplement form.
Right.
I'm one of those people that I truly don't like taking supplements. But again, unfortunately, with the way that our system is in terms of food and the quality of food, sometimes you do need it.
Yeah.
That's where it also comes into play to say, if you're on this journey and you're able to get a test done of your kind of levels of nutrients in your system. So you can get an organic acids test, you can get your metabolomic tests done. You can do those types of things and see and say, oh, I have a whole host of deficiencies. This is specifically what I want to supplement, rather than just blindly supplementing.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, supplements is a whole nother conversation, of course, but I definitely had a joke with a few of my friends where we all realized actually we were just taking all the supplements that our mums were taking.
Yep.
We're like, yeah, we just directly copy because that's what we thought we should take. I don't know. No idea. It wasn't actually until I spoke to an alternative medical doctor and it just had it. And this is what I was just about to say. It's just had a conversation. What a simple but powerful word. A conversation about what was going on with my health. And I was like, yeah, I always get really dry skin at this point in the month. Like my skin feels like it's peeling off. My face is falling off. Why? And different things like that. And I talked about the bouts of anxiety that I felt, so in touch with myself majority of the month, but 48 hours and I'm a psychopath. What is that? Different things. And he said, oh, no problem. So we just need to balance this out with this. Even suggested things like hemp seed oil, a little more black pepper in food to help absorb nutrients, things I had no idea, and things that didn't cost me particularly any money. I didn't break the bank, but it was just small little incremental changes. And that came from a conversation, which is what I was actually just going to ask you is that do you think actually the root and how we can elevate women's understanding on a bigger scale of how vital their hormonal health is, how vital the specificity of their attention to their health as a woman is, that just by having more conversations, by it being spoken about more, to end this talk that you can't talk about your period, because it's gross. It's an amazing thing that you said. Actually, no, it's a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. I absolutely. It is because growing up, at least for me, I have a brother and a father.
Uh-huh.
In my household, it was never talked about.
Right.
No, it was hush hush. It was, oh, okay, well, my mom would say to my dad kind of, oh, well, leave her alone this week. Right. But it was so hush hush and it was so icky and nasty and I don't want to talk about it, and in truth, we need to change that. I mean, there's a really good book called The Red Tent where basically they talk about how back in the day, women were, on the one hand, we were relegated away from society during your monthly cycles. And oftentimes all of our cycles would be synced. And so it would sync between us and then it would also sync oftentimes with the moon. And so, I mean, if the moon can shift the tides, then I think it can shift a little body, an individual.
I think so too. Yeah.
So, but so what would then happen is they would all be in this tent and they would be kind of on for that week. It was just the women together. And think about what happened during that week. The women would converse, they would share stories, they would impart wisdom down from our elders. They would, all of that. And that's been missed. That's completely gone. Right. You might now you talk to, you say, oh, I have this. And your mom says, well, go to the doctor.
Yeah. Let's go to the doctor and then let's we'll buy you some tampons. Here's how you use it. Let's never speak of this again.
Exactly. And so it's you hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely. Which is one, having more conversations and two, destigmatizing what it is. I mean, frankly, again, if we start rethinking and reframing it into this is a superpower, think about what we could do. We could say to the men in our lives, our friends, family, brother, fathers, whatever, and say to them, listen, this week, yes, I am on, like, say it, and don't have the stigma of, oh, I'm hormonal and oh, this is horrible. No, it's I am, and this week I am going to be much more creative. I'm going to be much more introspective. And so when we're thinking about a problem that we've been trying to solve as a problem as a family in general, let's say, or then let me sit on my own and let me think about it. Right. And not this, oh, it's so horrible that I need to sit and I need to binge Netflix and give me popcorn and chocolates and this and this and this, because that is also a very kind of negative association. Everything about it is negative. Whereas now for me, I oftentimes will say, okay, great. My period, great. What does that mean? I'm having a bubble bath for sure. I am going for a really long walk. I'm making sure that I'm stretching like crazy, right, throughout my entire body. I'm doing more breath work. I'm journaling. I'm finding a book that I absolutely really, really have been wanting to read the entire month and saying, okay, I'm getting off of social media, I'm getting away from the computer, and for 2 days, I am sitting and only reading that. Think about even that, like those things I just said, how would that change the how people frame the menstrual cycle, how people say how people look forward to it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I look forward to it, let's not be crazy, but I do,
Right.
at this point, again, because I don't have cramps really, and it's, or if I do, it's very, it's minimal, then then I can have that, move on, and then have a couple of days where it's I get to be selfish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this is the part of the month where I nourish myself. I give myself the nourishment that I need. And that's another whole conversation, but that nourishment is not junk food and sedentary and locking yourself away in a cave so that no one has to see you in this horrible state.
Yeah.
It's that by you saying that, it's like it's a time to celebrate your yourself as a woman and give yourself some reflection time, and like you said it right at the beginning of this conversation, that if your period is your monthly report card, then it is your time to be more introspective and to look internally and say, I'm just going to check in with myself in these 3 days. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. How much more of a relief would that be to so many women to just know, just take a few days to give yourself support. And that goes for partners too, right? That it's like, actually, I'm going to nourish myself for these 3 days, and be great if you can support me in that.
Yeah. And if you think about, and I like that you just pointed that part out as well, which is, if we think about our partners, I think about women in general and our role.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes our role ends up being, for whatever reason, genetics, social cultural programming, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being the caretaker,
Right.
right? And it ends up being the one that is always there and making sure that things all fit together, like making sure that things don't fall apart, right?
Right.
um, and we, to some extent, we love that role, or I love that role, but it's nice to get a couple days off, right?
Yeah.
And if you think there's I don't know if you ever read the book by John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Do you know, I know about this book, but I actually haven't read it yet. No, it's on my
It's
list.
Read it.
All right.
It's great. It's great. It's an old book.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
has a he has a new one, Beyond Mars and Venus, which is also, is kind of a refurbished version of it for
Great.
kind of the modern man, the modern woman. But
Yeah.
one of the things he does say is, it is this balance in the relationship of even learning to be vulnerable and learning to say, yeah, you know what, I'm not feeling well, or I'm not, like, this week, can you do the dishes, can you make food, can you sort out the kids, can you do this, right? And it thinking about even the push and pull of a relationship, of a woman finally finally kind of giving up and saying, I can be vulnerable with my partner, and my partner can protect me and can provide and can take care of things. Maybe it's not going to be the exact way that you would, right?
Sure, sure.
But it's that gift that he's giving you, or she's giving you, whoever it is, right? It's that gift, who of time, of effort, of taking care of you, which sometimes I think as modern women we also need to learn how to let go. And so
Wow.
maybe that's it, maybe like once per month you have an opportunity to let go, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, wow. What an incredible note. I mean, I think that's an incredible mantra for life, right? Be
Yeah.
vulnerable, take care of yourself and your body, and trust those around you to support you in that mission of taking care of yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just to finish, what, I mean, I think we already know the answer, but what would be your number one um, when it comes to where to start in terms of female biohacking?
Hormones.
Hormones.
Get kind of understanding your hormones. Yeah.
Understanding your hormones, and
Yeah.
what kind of practical steps is it? Sort of things that you've mentioned before, like just being more aware, or and then going to take the kind of tests like you mentioned to see if there are any imbalances.
Yeah. So I think So there is a really, really good hormonal panel test called the Dutch hormonal panel test.
Right.
It's about $300 or so. So it is an investment, right? But what they do is they can map out your hormones and they can tell you
Wow.
what exactly is going on.
Mm.
So because oftentimes when you haven't gone down this path yet, people can say, oh, you have an imbalance. But the question becomes, what type of an imbalance? Is it that you have too much estrogen in your body? Or is it that you're not excreting estrogen in the right manners? Those are two very different problems, right?
Right.
And so they need to be approached in two very different manners.
Right.
Now, but again, the only way that you're going to do that is figuring it out through a test. So it's a really simple test. So it's called Dutch because it's DUTCH, Dry Urine Test Comprehensive Hormonal Panel.
Right.
So it comes in the mail, you pee on a couple sticks, you send it back. You dry it, you send it back. There's no blood, there's no feces, there's no nothing.
Right.
Which is
Right.
quite. So I would say that's the first thing that I would do.
Great.
If you're willing to put that investment. If not, I would start at least looking into cycles, right? And looking into and understanding your cycle. So if it's look into some in terms of birth control, I would say look into Sarah Hill's book, look into Jolene Brighton's book, look into Lara Bryden's book. Those are three really, really good resources to just start educating as to what is the birth control and what has it, what it does to your body, and then how these three doctors would, or two doctors and one researcher, would discuss getting off of it potentially, or pulling away from it, or other alternatives, because they do talk about other alternatives as well. When we think about contraception, it's when we say birth control, it's beautifully aligned and everybody thinks that it's just the pill, but there are a whole bunch of other options for birth control, right? It's just that the pill has done really good marketing. So I would start there. And then I think in terms of the comment about women and community and discussing, I run WealthCo. So WealthCo is women's health community. It's an online platform specifically for women biohackers. And we pulled it off of Facebook because we didn't really want to deal with the censorship there. So it's a separate platform.
Right.
But these are the types of conversations we have there. And so to your point about vulnerability and educating and sharing stories and seeing these types of things, that's where you can actually have these conversations. So,
great. And do people just simply Google that and they can get access to that? Or I know are you on Instagram as well? Can people find you on there?
Yep. So it's so in terms of the website, it's whealth.community.
Right.
So wealth community, WealthCo.
Right.
So www.whealth.community.
Great. I'll pop a link in the show notes as well, so people can just click there to make it easy.
Fab. And then on Instagram as well. And we have conversations. We have our own podcast. We have conversations with specifically doctors and researchers on women's health issues. So yeah, if you're interested, then either ping me. I'm also on Instagram at _dash of health and or on WealthCo. Ping me. You guys can and we can have a dialogue.
Amazing. Is there going to be a lot of talk of women's health at the Health Optimization Summit in January?
I'm not sure. I do know that there are a couple of Jolene Brighton actually was scheduled to be there, but I don't know all the details.
Ooh, well, if not, I've got my ticket and it's going to be amazing. So another amazing place to start, right? Get a ticket to the Health Optimization Summit if you want to learn about biohacking in general, because it's going to be amazing. And there's it's the best speakers of the world of biohacking, right, are all going to be there. So super exciting. Dasha, thank you so much. I've learned so much from this conversation, and I feel really empowered as a woman after. So I think that's a job well done.
Good. I'm glad. This has been fun. It's been a pleasure. So thank you for hosting and for letting me come on. Really appreciate it.